All right, final word, season 18, episode 17. 10 years of the final word, which we kind of dropped in before. We will do things. I don't know what these things will be.
No.
I'm not going to overpromise. I've been asked quite a bit about live shows recently for the Ashes. I am not overpromising. In fact, I'm underpromising. In fact, I'm suppressing any talk of them, for I know how fucked up that becomes when we get nearer to them, and I know how busy we will be. We will see. We will see. However, it is the 10th year of the final word, and we're proud of that. And we get into our second segment, and we talk about, well, it doesn't sound like an important thing out of context, India A playing the England Lions, but it's relevant to the major series that we were talking about before, England-India, which starts on the 20th, I think, of this month, Jeff, 20th of June, 19th of June. It's not long away. It's soon. Yeah. It's soon. So India A, their first fixture, an unofficial test match against the Lions down at Canterbury. They went big with the bat. 557. Karun Nair, Jeff, back in town, back in the squad. 204, batting at number 3. Here we go.
Here we go. First class fixture?
It is indeed.
Okay. Loves a double. Loves a big ton. This is what we want to see, the comeback trail. And no better way to do it. So, yeah, it was always likely to be in the 11 given the composition of the squad, with the possible variations being elsewhere, who's doing what, with Eswaran versus Sai Sudarshan and so on. Dhruv Jurel in the squad as well. Almost turned up, didn't quite made 94. Sarfaraz Khan made 92. I feel for little Safi. Every time surely he should be in the squad. Surely he deserved to be in the squad. But
two things about that: weight of numbers at domestic level, and he played well against England last year. Like it wasn't like he was a liability when he played Test cricket. So in a high profile,
played 3 games, made 150, and did all you could do really.
And Dhruv Jurel, who played 1 Test in Australia, he's in the squad. So 2 of them are in the squad. Sarfaraz Khan is not, but Karun Nair very much is. A few wickets for Josh Hull. I just sort of feel like that he's not as far away as people think he might be. I just sort of feel like, having played that Test last year and it been derided as a bad selection, like they just pushed the boat out a bit too far, picking a bloke with next to no first class experience. That this year so far he's consistently taken wickets, and as we'll talk about a little bit later on, they have a couple of injuries in the mix again. So left armour at pace, we'll see. Then James Ruse, England Lions, made 587, so they took a first innings lead. Tom Haynes, remember the name, 187. I mentioned the other day, he's in the middle of I think he's 24 now, Division 1 for Sussex, gets picked for the Lions and immediately makes a big 100. And love to see this, Max Holden, who was a late call-up to the Lions squad. He's a player of pedigree. He was captain of the England 19s years ago, and he's had high moments at Middlesex. He's had difficult moments at Middlesex. Gets the chance to play for the England Lions for the first time and makes 100. So well played, Max, lovely fella as well.
Should be an Australian of the 1980s with that name. That would be a beautiful, driving the old Premier, the Sandman, the WB down to the beach in 1983. Max Holden, that's the name.
He doesn't
on the top of an ice cold amber one.
He doesn't look like someone who would drive that kind of car.
No,
he's a very well. How would I describe Max Holden's looks? Movie star looks. He's more likely to be driving a Lamborghini than he would be a Holden VR. We'll see. And Dan Mosley also made a ton, or as Norcross is now calling him, Dan Mousley. He's like, you wouldn't, as he said on commentary the other week, if your name was spelled Hiddler, you wouldn't call yourself Hitler. So why is a bloke with the name spelled Mousley going by Mosley? I fully agree with you,
sure.
Daniel.
If your name was Oliver Robinson, you might think about tweaking a bit.
Lots of overs into the legs of Shardul Thakur, who I think probably will play the first Test as well. So good work from the Lions on that front. India ended it in good nick as well. They made 241 for 2 half centuries for Jaiswal, who made 20 odd in the
Was
first
this the
dig.
Flattest pitch of all time? Do
Feels
they need a tree back there, or would a tree help things down at Canterbury?
Yeah, so all of them got 50s in the second dig. Jaiswal, who's the one, the captain. Jurel got another 50, and Hitesh Kumar Reddy, who we adore, got 52 not out. So the second unofficial Test this week, KL Rahul's going to play, but Shubman Gill and Sai Sudarshan are not. They were both going to play this, and they're both pulled out, so I'm not sure what the go is there, but we'll get to see KL Rahul in action from, I think they start on Friday at Wantage Road. So, another game to keep an eye on. And, Jeff, good news, reports out of India, hope they're true, it's going to remain the Patowdy Trophy.
As it should.
There was some chat the other week. So the Patowdy Trophy is the one they play for in England, and the one they play for in India is
the Anthony Mello.
There you go. I can't remember what it is, Anthony Mello. But this has been in, it's been around for a time, decades, and it's to recognise the contribution of the Patowdys and, of course,
specifically the senior Nawab playing for England and India. So
and
the only player to do that.
And Tiger Patowdy being a successful captain in England as well was the other framing, I think, on that front.
But anyway, it was sort of formally it was named after senior, and it was done in honour. Junior was still alive at that point, so it was done as a kind of mark of respect for his father, with him cognizant of it.
And look, Lawrence Booth's too classy to get stuck in too much. And he did write a piece at the time when they renamed the Wisden Trophy. So England, West Indies played for the Wisden Trophy, and then that got shunted in favour of the Richards Botham Trophy. And Lawrence was diplomatic, but, we were fairly strident about how that was absolute bullshit. You've got a trophy.
And it is absolute bullshit. You just picked the two most famous players from those teams, even though they never played against each other, really, very rarely, and didn't and the games where they both played had nothing much interesting happen in them, and both of them had a poor record against the Windies. Like, none of it checked out.
Well, I think the fact that they're best mates was the other reason that they've been best mates for life from their days in Somerset all the way through. Was more the connection with Richards and both of them, although they did play against each other. I think it was more to do with their link.
But to name a Test series trophy after them, you've got to have a kind of Test rivalry. That's what makes sense. That's what the Warren Muralitharan makes sense, because they went neck and neck through their entire careers. It just didn't check out. It felt like such a sop to celebrity. Who are the players that people have heard of? So if they were renaming this one, they'd go, oh, it's the Tendulkar Gooch Trophy or some shit.
Well, that was what was moved. It'd be the two highest profile cricketers you can pull out of the hat. Is it the Anderson Tendulkar or the Kohli? And I'm not saying that these players don't deserve recognition in various ways, but they've got a trophy already. So hopefully the reports out of India, Gavaskar was celebrating this, which he was furious when there was talk of it being changed, as you might imagine with Sonny. That's a little bit of news ahead of the series. And speaking of the A teams that we were rattling through before, there is an Australia A squad now, Jeff, that's been named for that top end series that we discussed briefly last week in Darwin. It's coming up against Sri Lanka in the middle of the month. And it includes Kurtis Patterson.
Yes.
What a great story this is. I mean, I know we've banged on about this.
Karun Nair, Kurtis Patterson,
they're back.
The redemptions, the comebacks, the two prongs are going to meet in the middle at some point.
I hope so. So 350 over games and 2 first-class games against Sri Lanka A. But, momentum here. He's done the New South Wales thing. Grade cricket at the start of last season. Into the New South Wales team. Averaged in the 60s, couple of hundreds. Played over here for Surrey, did well, couple of 50s. That brief stint's now over because they're into the 20-over stuff here. Now into the Australia A squad through the winter. It's all coming together nicely for him to dominate this series and to be a feature in the Ashes. So he'll go from grade cricket to the Gabba in the space of 12 months, and what a story it will be. I'm backing him in. Here we go.
Make it so. Make it happen. But tough to, with about 10 players who could all be in the side for the World Test Championship final. Tough to crack the first Ashes test unless, I don't know, there's a treadmill incident that injures 4 players or something like that. But once Khawaja goes, opens up a bit of space there, who knows what happens after that. Injury form, all the rest of it, the possibilities are there. They don't play much Test cricket next year, Australia, do they? They've got the Ashes, and then they go to South Africa? They
do. They go there in late September, early October. I was for about 5 minutes there. I'm like, oh shit, late September's not ideal for me because I break for Hawthorn. But maybe our brief 12-month era is complete, having been touched up by Collingwood on Friday night. We might have. We'll release a DVD like St Kilda did when they won 8 games in a row, and we'll be
And that's that.
12 months a long time away. I might be darting back between South Africa and Melbourne during that series. Let's hope so.
Yeah, might be getting a little ahead of yourself there. Probably. Now, but are those the only Test matches they play between?
Yep.
No,
that's wrong. That's not right. Sorry. Actually, no, it doesn't quite work that way. So they have Bangladesh in the top end series in the August, and then begins this remarkable run where they go Bangladesh, then they go to South Africa, then they return for the New Zealand series at home, and then they go into. And would I be right in saying the T20 World Cup might be in the mixer there as well somewhere? I think it might be.
T20 World Cup is next February, March.
Oh, it's earlier. Okay, but still, in terms of Test cricket, Bangladesh in the top end, South Africa away, New Zealand at home. India away straight after that for 5 Test matches, then back for the sesquicentenary, and after that they've got
to England.
go to England for 5 Ashes tests and maybe another World Test Championship final if they were so lucky. So it's going to be really exciting when we get to about August next year when all of that run of Test cricket begins. But yeah, a nod to the future in this A squad with Oliver Peake, who is in some respects the headline. He's played one very good first-class game for Victoria, but if you're picking an 18-year-old, that's on spec. And his Victorian teammate Cam Kellaway is also in there, who has, to an extent, banged the door down with a couple of massive games for Victoria at the end of the season. He seems like a bit of a chosen one, Cam Kellaway as well. And then some experienced heads like Matt Renshaw. He's got so many Australia A caps. Nathan McSweeney, who used Australia A to get into the Test team last year. And Jeff, a great story in Jake Weatherald, who you've been celebrating him for a number of years now, having now led the Shield for runs in 24-25. He finally gets the chance to play for Australia A at age 30.
Well, Oliver Peake, I hope the literate types in the Australian setup with their habit of naming you after 4 runners who have the same name. I hope they call him Mervyn. Get a bit of Mervyn Peake in there, the author of Gormenghast. I'm sure they'll be big fans of his work. But Jake Weatherald, I was overjoyed to see this. I've enjoyed his work for such a long time, and he's just always been one of those players who I'm puzzled that there's not ever really been conversation about. I don't think I've ever heard him brought up as a contender for higher honours, really. So, yeah, huge Shield season. It feels like he's been around forever, but 30 isn't an old age in cricket these days. So the fact that he's there is reward for effort, and I hope he can do something with the opportunity.
And also, you don't get many Northern Territory cricketers, do you? I think that's where he started his life.
He's born and bred up there, and then went to South Australia later. So you have to get out. Basically, Darcy Short, another one who ended up through WA and then playing for Hobart in the Big Bash. So there aren't a lot of kind of grassroots Northern Territory cricketers who crack it interstate at sort of top level domestic cricket. So that is something that he'll be not entirely a pioneer, but he's a high profile example of.
As foretold, Jason Sanger gets a start here as he should after his Shield final. So he's back in Australia A contention where he has played before. Todd Murphy was going to be playing, but the reporting yesterday was that he's got a county deal. So I'm not quite sure where that is, but it'll rule him out. Therefore, they'd have to get another spinner in. And I'm bearing the lead here. How about the King of Geelong, Big Billy Stanlake? He's back. I mean, it's been a long time since I've thought about Billy Stanlake in national contention, but there he is. All 6'7" of him will be playing in the top end in June and July. So that's a nice story for a guy who, for a time, was one of the first names on the team sheet for the Aussie white ball team. He's got to go back a while. It's kind of a 2018 story, isn't it? But, he had genuine pace. He was bowling teams out. He was helping win games for Australia, and then he, through a combination of injury and form and moving states and that type of thing, fell off the radar. But, yeah, I'm pleased to see him back, Big Billy.
He was the kind of bowler who made people uncomfortable, slightly unusual action, that kind of split-legged jump into the crease and then so tall, the ball coming down from that prodigious height. And he was really able to make the radar talk as well when he was on song. But, yeah, it's hard to keep that together with injuries. So it'll be interesting to see what the current iteration of him is like, whether is like that older style or whether he's had to tweak things.
So those matches, I mentioned before, I think a couple of first-class games, which will be of note in the middle of the year in the top end. Back to the UK, the limited overs series are taking place between England men and England's women against West Indies men and women respectively as well. So that's worked out quite nicely, watching those two series side by side. It was a real old-school one-day vibe on Sunday, Jeff, where I was playing, but people were like genuinely following along the scores because England was set 309 to win with Kesey Carty having made a century earlier in the day. So that's his second 100 in a week, having made one against Ireland as well. So Shai Hope made 78. Rashid got 4 for, and Saqib Mahmood got 3 for. So, they did well, the Windies, to get 308. Then England lose 2 early wickets. They're 2 for 2. The collapse is on, and in walks Joe Root. Makes 166 not out. His highest score in one-day cricket. His 18th one-day ton. He passed Owen Morgan for career one-day runs in the process, so the most for England in one-day international cricket. and they hunt it down with an over to spare or thereabouts, with Root batting all the way through to get them to a win by 3 wickets. So, one of these, again, like Sunday afternoon following a big chase, a superstar in Joe Root in the team, getting it done. It's, as Will McPherson said on social media, it's a bit of a reminder of how good one-day cricket can be when you have games like that. And it often gets dismissed these days because of T20 cricket. But when we get to see 50-over cricket in a concentrated way, often World Cups can help with this. We're reminded of just how brilliant the format can be as well. And I'm really pleased to see that Joe Root, having spent a little bit of time in the one-day wilderness out of favour, having been brought back for the Champions Trophy, is dominating again.
Well, a bad T20 is bad if a side makes 180 and the other team's 3 for 10 and it all fizzles out. It's just over more quickly. But it's an interesting one with Root. So with his test runs and his one-day runs, he's gone past 20,000 in those two formats combined. And then there's this kind of odd quirk with his T20 runs where he doesn't even have 1,000 in T20 cricket. It looks strangely missing on his CV. I think he's 11th all up for England for T20 runs. And there was, it seems like it's quite a few years where he's been saying he wants to try to get back into the T20 side. I feel like just let it go. Like, he's going so well in everything else. Just concentrate on the two that he's got and be the best of the best. The fact that he's been so prolific in both, the fact that he's got a huge target to try to see if he can catch Tendulkar at the top of the tree for test runs. But yeah, what can he do? In terms of one-day runs for England, and having that bigger canvas just suits him so well to be able to take his time through a 50-over chase. A good 50-over run chase is so much more satisfying than a good 20-over one in so many ways.
Yeah, it's the distribution of resources thing, isn't it? When you've only got 10 wickets in hand, as it is in any game, of course, but when you've got 50 overs to use them, you can't afford to bat in the way that you would in a T20 when chasing. It just doesn't enable that kind of enthusiasm. So it does require a different gear to be batted in for most of it, and no one is better at that than Joseph Root. A bit of injury news out of this as well. So Gus Atkinson's missing with a niggle. It's being painted as a bit of a race against time for him for the India test matches in a couple of weeks. I'm sure they're managing him carefully, but Atkinson has been in just about every England test team since he made his debut 12 months ago. So they'll absolutely want him there for that first test at Leeds, but that's why he's been missing from the men's one-dayers. As for the women's one-dayers, they're also one game into their 3-game series. It was at Derbyshire a couple of nights ago. England won big, but there were lots of interesting storylines running through this. So they made 345 for 6, which is a huge score, an opening stand of 222 between Tammy Beaumont, who we expect that of, and Amy Jones. Now, that's Amy Jones's first century for England, having made her debut 12 years ago and having been a mainstay in the side since Sarah Taylor retired in, 2018, 2019, something like that. So it's been a long time since Amy Jones has opened the batting. You've got to go back to the Women's Ashes of 2019 when that didn't work out well, but maybe she's timed her run immaculately. She's a senior player in the team. She hasn't been asked to captain it, which is the right call, I think. They've got a World Cup coming up in September and into October as well in the subcontinent. I wonder whether, she's a long time past that match-winning half-century in the semi-final of the 2018 T20 World Cup, but she has been seen as a player who has from time to time gone missing in big moments, but she's always had a high ceiling. We've seen that in T20 cricket around the world. So, yeah, I wonder whether that might be the combination ongoing with Beaumont and Jones.
Well, I suppose, they wanted Maya Bouchier in that spot, didn't they? And it just didn't pan out. Had that real slump and couldn't make a run. So they're looking to something else. Charlotte Edwards does tend to go tried and true a lot of the time. And I suppose you can say, okay, you're one of our most experienced. You've got to prove that you can do this gig up the top. But it's still, performance under pressure is always the Amy Jones problem. That's where she's fallen down. I could take the view that at least having her open the batting reduces the chances that she'll be batting with the tail or batting at the very end of an innings, which is when things went spectacularly badly in Australia in a way that I feel I will probably never quite get over. I hope that she does, but others who are watching on might not. So maybe that's worth it to give her open air, I suppose, at the top of the order. In a lot of ways you have more clarity because you don't have to tailor your game to the circumstances as much. Size of the chase comes into it a bit, but fundamentally you've got to check out a few overs, see if anything dangerous is happening, make sure that you guard against a collapse, while also trying to take initiative and score freely where you can, no matter what the target is. I suppose you want someone who's going out there approaching things in roughly the same way most of the time, with a degree of adaptability depending on what the opening bowlers are doing. So maybe that suits a player like Jones, who does, I was going to say overthink, but maybe underthink, who gets confused in later innings situations.
Yeah, well, certainly a player who meets the criteria you go through there is Tammy Beaumont. What a career she's putting together here. Her 11th one-day ton, equal with Smriti Mandana in third spot now. Only Susie Bates with 13 centuries and Meg Lanning with 15 are ahead of her. Now, she's 34 now, so getting to Lanning will take some doing. In saying that, they're playing so much one-day cricket this year because of the World Cup. She is a puncher's
one hot
chance,
streak away.
Yeah, one hot streak away from being the most prolific century maker in women's one-day history. And when you consider the first 5 or 6 years of Tammy Beaumont's career, that's a remarkable story, and it continues to get better and better. So that was the foundation behind the massive score. And then the Windies were all out 237. Matthews made 48 for those who followed that closely, an opening stand of 91. But then, I said there were storylines throughout this. Lindsay Smith, 5 for 36 on her one-day debut. Now, the reason that's interesting to me is that she made her T20 debut 7 years ago, never got picked for a one-dayer, spent years in the wilderness, would have almost certainly thought her international window had closed when the other left-arm spinner, Eccleston, was dominating. The emergence of Charlie Dean, another reason why she would have found it hard to get back. But now in the absence of Eccleston at the moment, she's taken a fifer on one-day debut, had to do the hard yards in domestic cricket, and at age 30 it's clicked. And look, it clicks for a lot of male spinners at age 30, especially finger spinners. So I hope there's more for Lindsay Smith to come, one of the really interesting and fun characters in the women's game as well. They've got 2 more games in the series, one at Leicester on Wednesday, then they play in Taunton, then they have India for another multi-format series later in the summer.
And Eccleston will be back, but there's no reason you can't have 2 spinners of the same kind. We've seen Australia with the 2 leg spinners. There's always this odd conservatism in cricket that it's fine to have 3 right arm seamers, but it's not okay to have 2 left arm spinners or that sort of thing. They're different styles of bowler, I suppose. I suppose that returns against this West Indies team is so limited that returns against them will be ranked as less valuable than performances against other teams. But and we're not going to have Heather Knight for any of the rest of the series because she's picked up. It's not so much a short-term injury, but that these hamstring problems she's been having are related to a deeper underlying tendon problem, which is significant, which means she's going to miss the season, which is really unfortunate. That Commonwealth Games season a couple of years ago when she was hobbling around on crutches with that hip problem, missed a lot of cricket there, given up the captaincy here. So, as it turns out, that was necessary because she wouldn't have been able to play anyway. But it's sad that she's going to miss a big chunk rather than just a couple of games.
Oh yeah, if a hammy's keeping you out for the whole season, it's a serious injury. To that tendon. It's a major tendon issue. It's been described that way. So she'll be out of the 100, out of the home summer against India and race against time again that term for the World Cup in September and October in the subcontinent. So good luck to Heather in her comeback because they need her experience at a global tournament. That much is certain. She may not be captain anymore, but she's still the player with the most experience in the team.